Hey, how you guys doing? It's me, Mr. 4K Upscaler. I don't know if I ever showed you this collector's edition. It's the limited, actually it's the ultimate limited collector's edition signed by Christopher Nolan for the Dark Knight trilogy. I pretty much owe every collector's edition that Christopher Nolan has released on all of his movies. I have every single movie. I even have the Inception collector's edition as well, which I'm also pre-ordering the 4K Blu-ray, all of his collector's editions movies. They're being remastered in 4K and Dolby Atmos, so including the Dunkirk as well. But we're gonna go through this a little bit. I don't know if you can still buy this like in stores. You might have a hard time finding this in store, maybe in some stores, but this is really difficult item to buy right now in stores. You would have to like go to eBay or something, most likely eBay, to purchase this, but you'll probably have to pay a higher price for it. Luckily, I still have this. I have it, and it's definitely one of the best collector's items, and I'm gonna show you why. Here, let me take this off. When you take this off, you're presented by really great packaging. This is a really great packaging here, and you get treated with this booklet for the Batman Begins, which is the first movie right here. You can pull it out, and inside you will find, here, let me just move my camera out a little bit. Inside you're going to find the first movie, Batman Begins, and the stills, poster stills, art that's being drawn into the booklet, and you're also going to find the disc inside of it. So there you have the disc. You have all of the poster drawings and everything. It's in there. And it's pretty cool, It comes with one disc right here, with all the special features and everything. It's inside. And here we go to the other side, and we find, the Joker, Heath Ledger, the late Heath Ledger. And then we find the Dark Knight movie, and we also find the special features, which is right over here as well. All of these discs, they come with special features, so you get pretty much everything here. Then we turn to this side, and then we find the Dark Knight Rises. There's the Bane right there. There's also two discs with special features. They're presented there. All of them come with a commentary with Christopher Nolan and producers and the writers. And then here we turn to this side, and this is basically a special feature for all of the three movies, like a special disc, special feature that comes with all of them, which is pretty cool. And then here you get presented by another art right here. It's pretty cool, and this is like a collector's item. This is something like you wanna keep. If you're a collector, if you love Christopher Nolan movies, this is something you wanna collect and keep, which I did. I had this now for 4 years, I think now, 4.5 years, almost 5 years. I had this thing, and I'm still keeping it. I don't know if I'm ever going to sell it. There's some things you just don't want to sell. There's some things you just want to keep as a reminder, just like how much you cared about the movie and the work they've done into it. Now let's get to some other cool stuff there inside here. And here we get with some more goodies. You're presented by this very nice collector's edition, Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises trilogy, and this is very nicely done. When you go through this booklet, first thing you can be presented is by Christopher Nolan, and there's a message that he wrote down, that he signed it. Well, I'm going to show it to you right now. It's right here. You can read it. It says right here, It's been 10 years since I walked out of Ellen Horn's office, which is in Warner Brothers, and he gave me the keys to one of the most prized assets, which is the DC comic books Batman. So, Christopher Nolan pretty much resurrected the Batman. As you all know, Batman was having a hard time after, Tim Burton's Batman. They started. It was a joke pretty much with George Clooney and all the other guys that played it. It just wasn't that good. It was like a kids play or something. So he pretty much resurrected the Batman, brought it back to life. And this is him just kind of writing it down. I can read this whole thing, but it would take a long time. But there's a signature right here by Christopher Nolan himself. It's pretty cool to keep this, so that way, you get to understand what a long road it was for him to make all these movies. So you get treated with that. And then here, we're going to go through some of the stills of... it's pretty cool. This is very nicely done. The art here from the Batmobile and everything that's inside, it's really done nicely. Let me show you some more stuff. Batman Begins, the sixth film in the production. And the Batman Begins definitely one of the resurrection of the DC Comics. He really helped the DC Comics. He put the DC Comics in a totally new directions. From the video games, like video games have changed, even comic books, even the animated DC Comics have changed, because he really kind of pushed that envelope into a different direction, from the style, from the music with Hans Zimmer. Let's not forget Hans Zimmer. This movie wouldn't be without the Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard. The groundbreaking soundtrack that they created in this movie really adds to it. And you probably can hear it a little bit in the background. I'm playing it. It's pretty cool. This is a very high quality booklet for you to go and kind of go through it and read it. It's kind of cool to look at this stuff and just look at the effort it took, especially for Christian Bale. Because Christian Bale, he just did, prior to this movie, he did... I think it was called The Machinist. The Machinist, where he lost so much weight, like it was like 90 pounds, And then from that 90 pounds, he had to jump back into like 220 pounds of pure muscle for Batman Begins. And, Christopher Nolan talked about like how difficult and, dangerous it was for him to jump into that kind of like transformation. And here you get to see some more stills from the movie. Pretty cool stuff. Same thing here. As you can see, just how difficult it was to shoot all these scenes. It is one of the unique things about Christopher Nolan. All of his movies are pretty much like done in big, giant sets. There's a big giant scope with sets that he does these movies, and they're really done well. And he's not a huge fan of CGI. Like he said it many times. He only uses CGI where it's needed. But he likes to do his movies as real as possible. He likes to build big sets, do it on real locations. And that's what's so unique about his movies, is everything has that scope, because he does movies kind of like Lawrence of Arabia, with a big scope, with real locations, And here you get to see some drawings right here from the sketch art here for the script. Here, this is the some more sketch art right here that's written down for the movie. Here's that famous quote. It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me. And there's that famous poster of him. By the way, the first two Batmans, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, were filmed in Chicago, and Chicago pretty much is the Gotham City. It has become the icon of the Gotham City because everywhere you go in Chicago, it just reminds you of just the Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. With the famous Joker scenes. You can't help it, but if you live in Chicago, if you go walk in Chicago streets, you're gonna be reminded of Gotham, pretty much. And I think there's a reason why Chris Nolan chose to choose the Chicago as the Gotham, and that's because of his brother. His brother lives in Chicago, and that's the sole reason. Okay, it has nothing to do with the rate of crime that's in Chicago. It has nothing to do with that. It's just because of his brother. It's from Chicago, and we all know Nolan is from London, but the two different brothers. One here in the United States, one in London. But that's why. And here we go, Dark Knight. Why so serious? The famous quote by Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger was just groundbreaking and fearless. Here we see some more stills right here from the movie, the Fox and Bruce Wayne. Harvey Dent, Heath Ledger. Just good luck anybody ever trying to recreate what Heath Ledger did. I think good luck. I don't think anyone will ever be able to fill in the shoes that Heath Ledger did here. It's just not going to be possible. Sorry. Good luck to all of you out there trying to recreate what he did here. Simply, and it's what's even more devastating is the fact that this was his last role, and he really it's almost like he knew this is going to be my last role, but I'm going to give it everything, 100% and beyond. I'm going to give it the best I've got. But unfortunately, it took him to the grave. Now, there's a lot of speculations. People say that this movie might have drove him really, really insane and crazy, but that's not true. Christopher Nolan would have pulled the plug on it if that was the case. I don't think he would have allowed. I don't think he would risk actors, damaging their health, mental state, if that was the case. That was never the case, and everybody said, Heath Ledger was always there, ready. Now, if he was hiding it, that's a different story. The directors and the crew cannot read what's behind somebody's mind. All right, but when he was on the set, they were saying that he was always laughing and having good time, so there was no indication of him being ever under any kind of mental state. He stayed in character, and he wanted to stay in character, so that way he can give the best performance role. And everybody knew on the set, that he's going to stay in character, whether they're in the trailer or off, not shooting. So they knew that he was going to stay in character, so it wasn't like a big surprise or anything like that. But again, it's sad that we lost this actor. He's a great, great actor from Australia. There's Chicago right there, Chicago, and there's a Heath Ledger. That famous scene when where the truck flips, You can see even Starbucks coffee here. It's all in Chicago. And here, one of my favorite. One of my favorite scenes in the movie right here, when he's driving in the back of actually he's driving front seat, but he's actually in the back seat, steering the wheel with his legs. It's pretty insane. And then there's that famous scene when the 18-wheeler flips. This was done all in real time. There's no CGI here. What you see is what you get. What they had to basically do is they had to make this truck really light. They had to make it really light so it can flip perfectly, and it did. So they have to strip down a lot of stuff from the truck. According to Chris Nolan, they have to strip down a lot of things to make it very light and then flip. But it was dangerous because, they did have to take precautions not to damage the stores around or the street lights. So it was a very dangerous stunt to perform in the middle of Chicago. But they did it. Chris Nolan did it. It took a lot of tests, a lot of preparation, but they were able to pull it off. And it looked fantastic on the screen. This is in Hong Kong. That's the Batmobile. Now we're going into Dark Knight Rises here. Dark Knight Rises was another groundbreaking film, but also a tragic in a way because of that mass shooting that happened in Aurora, in Colorado. So, the Dark Knight trilogy, it is a very dark and, dramatic, kind of a sad story of this kid, this rich royal kid that grew up with his parents being killed, and then, but here's the thing, Chris Nolan always said he wanted to bring gritty, dark side of the Gotham and the DC comics as if it could really happen. And, Batman is the only comic book hero that could really happen in reality. Joker, it's something that could really happen in reality. And so it is my main reason why I always focused more on the DC comic of the Batman than I did to the Marvel, because Marvel was like too far-fetched to me, like to have such a superhero with super strength, that was too far-fetched a little bit for me. But this was more like a realistic portray of something that could really happen, somebody highly trained, highly skilled with a League of Shadows, Raja Ghul, team. It could easily happen. And here we get to see the Bane. Again, Bane, it doesn't have any supernatural powers. It's just that he's been, trained by the League of Shadows, but he got outcast. And so there's the Catwoman. And this is why I always like Batman. And this is the reason why, Christopher Nolan said he always stirred more toward the Batman, because it gave him the tools that could really happen in real life. With Superman, you're dealing with a little bit fantasy above and beyond kind of reality. Here, you're dealing with something that could really happen. Something that could truly be present. There's Gordon. Gary Oldman's such a great actor. I mean, he has done so many roles, from Dracula to him playing the villain in the Professional and the Air Force One. I mean, Gary Oldman is truly a chameleon. This guy did and can play any role, and he proved that. So Gary Oldman is a fantastic addition. Christopher Nolan was very lucky to have this type of a cast. If it wasn't for this type of a cast that he had, if it wasn't cast correctly like he did and got all these actors, and if it wasn't also for the soundtrack of Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard, the movie wouldn't be obviously what it is. And of course, the vision of Christopher Nolan definitely helped the movie. And here we see Tom Hardy as Bane. Again, another transformation where Tom Hardy had to put on a muscle, which he already did. He knew how to do it. He already played Charlie Bronson in that Bronson movie. But he had to go a little extra mile to put a little extra more muscle. He just finished filming The Warrior, so he was already big filming The Warrior. So from The Warrior, he just had to put a little extra more muscle, which still, it was not easy. It's extra hard work, but he did it. Shaved his head, and the rest is history. That's him. And by the way, that was his voice. People ask, was it voiceover by someone else? Tom Hardy confirmed, and Christopher Nolan confirmed that it was Tom Hardy's voice that he used. Like the way he spoke. I was wondering what he's going to, so he had that kind of like a deep voice. And there's Christian Bale as Batman. And we got a couple of more pictures here. There's that first part of the scene where they get captured on the plane. There's the plane scene right there. You see, everything is done like in real. They really had to carry this plane up in the air in New Zealand, and they had to do this. They have to flip it up like that, and the actors were inside. So that's the one unique thing about Christopher Nolan. He likes to do his stunts for real. And there's no CGI here. What you see is what you get. And I think that's that kind of a scope that makes his movies stand out than all the other movies. Because you can tell when something is CGI and when it's not. And with his movies, you're barely going to find any CGI. You see is what you get. And I think that's the kind of scope you get with Christopher Nolan movies, is that the gritty reality and the scope. And of course, here's a Christopher Nolan with his IMAX camera. And he's the first director that pushed the whole IMAX thing with The Dark Knight. And nobody knows how to use IMAX camera better than Christopher Nolan. He truly set the new standard for the IMAX. How long do you film in IMAX, and when do you cut the scenes? So he pretty much is like a surgeon of the IMAX cameras. He knows how to use them perfectly. Some directors out there like Michael Bay tried to do that, but they kind of failed because they cut